Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. All treaties null, all debts void, all threats welcome. It was signed by a man no one outside Earth's military structure had ever heard of. Not a president, not a diplomat, not even a council-appointed liaison. Just a blunt signature, Commandant Reeves. And in that moment, without a single warning shot or fleet movement, 1 billion systems held their breath. I remember the silence that followed. Not on Earth, but out there. In the outer systems. I was stationed aboard the Fury-class dreadnought Vindicator, doing orbital drills near Enceron, a council-linked planet crawling with soft-skinned negotiators and bureaucracy-fed elite who'd never held a weapon. They were the first to panic. I watched Enceron's high representative fall to his knees in the command chamber as the message played on loop. His silver robes crumpled under the weight of the realization. He knew what we all did, deep down. Earth didn't bluff. We were the only race in the council that earned our seat through war, not diplomacy. When the Karuva hives came screeching through the ardent void a century ago, the council sent probes and pamphlets. Earth sent nukes and boots. We didn't evolve in harmony like the Silkai, or spend millennia philosophizing like the Tervana. We evolved in blood, in betrayal, in struggle. That never left us, no matter how many polished suits they shoved us into for council meetings. But I wasn't a politician. I was a soldier. And when Earth made that call, everything changed in my bones. The command uplink severed, supply chains cut, orders stopped, just static on every earthbound frequency. We were alone. Captain Brandt stood silent on the bridge, arms folded tight across his chest. He didn't flinch. He just nodded once like he'd expected it. Maybe he had. Earth's patience with the Council had thinned over the years. Every plea for military support denied, every technology request blocked, every insult from smug species swallowed. Maybe we finally had enough. One of the junior officers spoke up, voice shaking. "Sir, protocol dictates we return to Earth Command." "There is no Earth Command anymore," Brandt replied, staring out the viewport. "There's just Earth. And us." Outside, Enceron spaceports began lockdown procedures. Panic transmissions poured in from Council vessels. "Please confirm this is a misunderstanding. Earth Command, respond. Please respond." They didn't understand what it meant. They never would. Earth wasn't just withdrawing from politics, it was pulling the pin. 3 hours later, the First Fleet mobilized. Not ours. Theirs. Council enforcement ships began circling Earth-aligned outposts. Surveillance probes deployed. Interrogation started. I got word that the Terran diplomatic station on Zalith Prime had been stormed by Council enforcers. 10 humans dead. 1 diplomat beaten. No response from Earth. No retaliation. Just silence. That's what scared them the most. Humans don't stay silent unless they're planning something. I stood on the lower observation deck, watching the stars and trying to make sense of what came next. We'd always fought for our place in the galaxy, clawed it inch by inch, system by system. And now we were letting it go. Not because we were weak, but because we didn't want their permission anymore. They looked down on us, those so-called enlightened species, saw our rage as savagery, our loyalty as stubbornness, our ingenuity as recklessness. They loved our muscle, hated our voice. They wanted our weapons, not our opinions. So we gave them what they wanted. We left. I felt the shift ripple across the systems like a seismic wave through space. Every outer colony, every border fleet, every planet with even a sliver of Terran blood, suddenly untethered. No more centralized command, no more rules of engagement. The Council had spent centuries building order, and Earth had just chosen chaos. I don't think most of them ever understood how dangerous silence could be. We'd been shouting for years, in council chambers, in diplomatic summits, on subspace channels begging for reinforcements, while our outer colonies got picked apart by raiders the Council pretended didn't exist. Every warning Earth gave was written off as aggression. Paranoia. Typical human volatility. So when we stopped talking? That was our war cry. 3 days after the withdrawal, I was summoned to the secure ops bay on Deck 4. The halls were different now. Tense. No casual chatter, no jokes in the mess. Just the cold, purposeful energy of people bracing for something they couldn't name. I passed crewmen whose eyes were fixed on the floor. Clenched jaws. Bloodshot eyes. We weren't soldiers of the Council anymore. We were orphans of a severed world. And the void between that realization and what came next. That was the part that scared even the toughest of us. When I entered the ops bay, Captain Brandt was already there, hunched over the holotable, projection swirling with real-time fleet movements. Not ours. Theirs. Council ships were repositioning across multiple sectors, Subfleet 92 circling Archon's belt, enforcement battalions moving into Terran trade routes. No war declarations, just slow pressure, like a predator tightening its grip around a wounded animal. "Any contact from Earth?" I asked. Brandt didn't look up. Still black. "How long are we going to wait?" He tapped the holotable, zoomed in on a flagged system, Galen's Reach, a minor Terran mining colony, populated mostly by civilian engineers and mineral contractors. The feed pulsed red. "Galen went dark 2 hours ago," he said. "Last transmission was disturbing." He tapped again. The transmission played, crackled, distorted, barely coherent, but enough to understand. Screaming. Explosions. One phrase repeated through the static, "They're not negotiating. They're exterminating." My blood went cold. Brandt shut it off. "They're cleansing the border colonies," he said. "Under the table, no official record, no open engagement. They're calling it containment." Containment. That's what they called it when they didn't want to admit fear, when they wanted the galaxy to believe everything was under control. I stared at the blinking lights on the holotable. Each red system, each lost signal. It wasn't just a logistical issue. These were lives, families, Terran colonies that trusted the flag of Earth would protect them no matter how far out they lived. But now that flag was silent, and the vultures were moving in. "Why aren't we retaliating?" I asked. "We've got the firepower. We could take their enforcement fleets apart in hours." Brandt finally looked at me. Tired eyes, anger buried under restraint. "Because they want us to. They want an excuse to declare us rogue aggressors. The moment we fire first, they slap the label they've been itching to use since the day we got a seat at their table." "So, we're just going to let them butcher our people?" "No," he said, voice low. "We're going to make them blink first." By the 5th day, half of Earth's outer colonies had severed ties with the Council voluntarily. Not because Earth ordered them to, because they'd seen what was coming. The Council's arrogance was slipping. They'd built their empire on balance, on control, on diplomatic threats and economic pressure. But Earth never played their game by the rules. We were raised in chaos. We thrived in it. And now we weren't alone. A broadcast came in from New Rigar, one of Earth's outermost colonies. The governor, a former military man named Halvor, stood in front of a flag drenched in smoke and flame. Behind him, ruins of Council surveillance towers lay in wreckage. "We will not be managed. We will not be pacified. Earth stood with us when the galaxy did not. So now we stand with Earth. Come for us, and we won't ask permission to bleed you." The signal spread like wildfire. 27 other colonies echoed the same stance within hours. Council bureaucrats scrambled for explanations. News feeds flooded with speculation. Panic. The galaxy had always seen humans as volatile, but predictable. Now, unpredictability had become our weapon. But with unpredictability came isolation. That night, I sat alone in my bunk, staring at the old photograph I kept behind my locker panel. My brother Jack, smiling with his kids in front of his hydro farm on Epsilon 9. That colony had gone dark, too. No alerts, no confirmed attacks. Just silence. I tried to imagine what it must have been like. Council enforcers in orbit, shutting down power grids under the guise of precaution, dragging men into the streets for questioning. Maybe Jack stood in front of his house with that stubborn jaw of his and told them they weren't welcome. Maybe they shot him where he stood. Maybe they never gave him that chance. I clenched the photo until the edge of the laminate cut into my thumb. Rage doesn't come in one big wave. It seeps in, quiet, corrosive, crawling under your ribs until it owns you. That night, I knew I wasn't going to sit idle while the council bled my people behind closed doors. Screw diplomacy, screw restraint. If Earth wasn't going to speak, I would. The next morning, we got our first message from Earth. It didn't come through official channels. It wasn't encoded in military-grade format. It came from a mining satellite near Titan. A primitive emergency beacon, repurposed, rerouted, and modified to play one line of text on repeat. Let them make the first cut, then we bleed them dry. It was a ghost signal, but it was unmistakable. Earth wasn't broken. Earth was watching. That changed everything. Captain Brandt ordered a reroute of our patrol path. We broke from Enceron and headed for the Dravik line, the outer edge of council-controlled space. A no-man's land of drifting colonies, abandoned supply stations, and criminal syndicates. We weren't going there for diplomacy. We were going to send a message. I briefed my men in the hangar bay. 40 soldiers, all Terran-born, all volunteers. No council implants. No allegiance to anyone but Earth. I laid it out for them clear. We're not soldiers anymore, I told them. Not by their standards. We're ghosts, shadows. And shadows strike when no one's looking. Their eyes lit up. Not with bloodlust. With clarity. We weren't here to start a war. We were here to end the lie of peace. We hit the Council's Black Site lab station at Carvis 12 at 0300 hours. Intel showed it was being used to interrogate Terran colonists under xenological quarantine protocols. That was their new term for torture. We breached their perimeter in less than 3 minutes. No announcements, no warnings. The first guard never saw us coming. We moved through the corridors like reapers, silent, efficient, unapologetic. My rifle kicked once, center mass, and the blue-skinned administrator hit the ground, still clutching his datapad full of fake charges and falsified reports. We didn't take prisoners. We didn't hold court. We liberated every human in that hellhole, then set charges on every system tied to their containment logs. No survivors. No evidence. Just a cold, clear message. You hurt ours. We burn yours. By the time we returned to the Vindicator, the Council had issued its first official statement on Earth's withdrawal, a call for collective galactic unity, a demand for Earth's readmittance under strict compliance reviews, a threat wrapped in velvet laced with desperation. Captain Brandt read it in full silence. Then he crumpled the digital display and tossed it into the disposal chute. "Tell them no," he said. I nodded. "Want me to be polite?" He cracked a rare smile. "Hell no." The war didn't start with a bang. It started with doubt. One by one, the smaller species began to question the Council. Not publicly, not in their government halls, but in hushed meetings, in encrypted messages passed between captains and colony governors. Earth had withdrawn. Yes, but what was worse was what followed. Truth, unfiltered, raw, and damning. The Council always prided itself on order, diplomacy, and peace. But they built that peace on selective justice. Their archives hid entire campaigns of sanctioned suppression, black site purges, and technological sabotage on less cooperative species. And now, Earth was leaking that history to every system that had ever felt the Council's boot on their neck. And we had plenty of boots to display. I was still stationed aboard the Vindicator when the first wave of responses rolled in. Most were anonymous, but they weren't vague. Terran message received. Confirmed. Our colonies experienced similar containment. Encrypted logs to follow. We watched the Karuva burn 2 of your planets. Council stood silent. We're ready to talk. Our Empire remembers the human stand at Harka Ridge. We did not forget. Neither did our warriors. Earth didn't need to raise its voice. All it had to do was speak the truth, and the silence shattered galaxies. But we didn't trust messages alone. We needed action. And so we gave them fire. I led Operation Dustveil myself. A small squad, 1 ship. A deep infiltration op into the Keveran Spire, a council data hub masquerading as a diplomatic outpost. Officially, it stored trade agreements. In reality, it was the largest off-world archive of black budget operations, including everything they ever did to Earth and its colonies. The mission was simple. Get in, extract the data cores, and broadcast the evidence across every known comms relay, untraceable, decentralized, and permanent. We wore black armor, no insignia, no faction markers. If they caught us, we'd be called terrorists. But truth doesn't need a name. It only needs to be seen. We breached the spire through its underbelly. Maintenance tunnels never meant for personnel transport. The stench of fuel and metal hung thick in the air. I led the team through with a steady pace, every step echoing in the silence. Keveran guards were soft. Council desk agents trained more in ethics theory than warfare. The first contact was laughable. A pale, 4-eyed bureaucrat trying to activate a defense protocol we'd already jammed. He didn't get to finish his sentence. We reached the data vault in 8 minutes. 2 minutes to crack the encryption. 30 seconds to transmit everything. Operations against Earth colonies, funding trails for enforcement squads, secret orders to disrupt Terran ship designs, even forged communiques meant to frame humans in interspecies sabotage events. The truth spilled across 1 million systems. And the galaxy panicked. Within hours, riots broke out on Velarin Prime, a Council core world. Thousands of non-human civilians took to the streets, demanding transparency. Others looted council chambers and broadcast speeches on stolen frequencies. Earth didn't fire a shot. Earth unveiled the mask. Captain Brant and I stood in the Vindicator's war room, watching it all unfold. Protests, fires, council fleets being recalled from Terran border patrol to defend their own core systems. The order they clung to was collapsing under the weight of their lies. Brant folded his arms, eyes hard but calm. They underestimated the power of truth. I didn't answer right away. I was watching a video feed of a protester standing on the Council Plaza steps. She held a human flag in one hand and a placard that read, "If Earth says no, why do we still say yes?" That was the moment I realized the war wasn't going to be fought the way we expected. This wasn't about guns anymore. This was about fear. We had it. They didn't. The Council called an emergency assembly 3 days later. Every member species was summoned, Earth excluded, obviously. They framed it as a unification conference, but we knew better. Desperation oozed from every word of their broadcast. The Galactic Council assures all systems that recent leaks are exaggerated, misrepresented, and manipulated by radical Terran elements. We call for unity, we call for reason, and we call for the immediate decommissioning of rogue Terran fleets in violation of peace accords. It was pathetic, but dangerous, because when tyrants start losing control, they don't beg. They burn. The Council passed an emergency resolution authorizing preemptive strikes on non-compliant Terran factions operating beyond Earth space. They tried to justify it with legalese, but everyone knew what it meant. They were going to start killing humans again. Only now, they weren't calling it containment. They were calling it galactic security. Captain Brandt stood in silence after the vote. Then he turned to me. No more waiting. We weren't going to play the ghost anymore. We were going to become the storm. Our counterattack wasn't massive, it was surgical. We hit enforcement depots, supply chains, Deep Space Council listening posts, not to destroy them, just to cripple their systems, scatter their fleets, and throw confusion into their logistics. Every strike we made was clean, brutal, and left a digital tag burned into the wreckage. You wanted our silence. Now live with our voice. We weren't alone anymore. The Varix clans, an exiled warrior species the Council declared uncivilized, joined our cause. The Dravathi brokers, long blackballed by Council trade unions, offered us comms tech we never even dreamed existed. Even the Allans, peaceful scholars who hadn't fought a war in 4,000 years, began shielding Terran colonies under their planetary codes to protect them from Council scans. This wasn't a Terran rebellion anymore. It was a galactic reckoning. The Council made one last mistake. They targeted Earth, not with fleets, not with bombs, with a virus, a biological payload launched from a Council freighter posing as a trade vessel, intercepted in the asteroid ring just outside Earth's orbit by the Orion Watch, one of the last surviving home defense units. The payload contained a nanoviral compound designed to shut down human neural activity within 72 hours. Genocide, gift-wrapped in diplomacy. They denied the attack, of course, called it a rogue actor, blamed it on a malfunction. But we knew better. Everyone did. Earth didn't release a statement. It didn't have to. The day after the failed attack, 12 Council systems went offline in coordinated blackouts, not destroyed, not bombed. Their satellites simply stopped working. Their databases wiped clean. Their comms silenced. Earth had woken up its oldest weapon, the Ghost Division. A myth, according to the Council. An abandoned Terran Black project. Nothing more than rumors. Except they weren't rumors anymore. They were back. And they were everywhere. No system was safe. No fleet was immune. The galaxy that once mocked human unpredictability now feared it with every breath. Because humans weren't fighting for dominance. We were fighting for truth, for vengeance, for memory. And we had centuries of it stored like gunpowder behind gritted teeth. On the 10th day, the Council began evacuating its core planets. Not because Earth threatened them, but because Earth didn't say anything at all. That silence? That was our last word. It didn't come with a speech. It came with the galaxy finally asking itself the question Earth always knew they'd ask. What happens when humanity no longer cares what you think? The answer? You lose control, you lose fear, you lose everything. And Earth begins to rewrite the rules. I always thought the Council would break from outside pressure, crumbling under the weight of uprisings and colonial revolts. But I was wrong. The death blow came from within. It started with Chancellor Irix, one of the senior Silkai delegates who had always presented himself as a hardline Terran skeptic. In council meetings, he'd been the loudest voice pushing for increased regulation of Earth's technological advancements. He once claimed humanity's creativity was a byproduct of unrefined aggression. So imagine the shock when he defected. Not quietly, not in the shadows, but publicly. Broadcasted live across 3 council worlds, he declared the council no longer spoke for his people. "We fed the lie of order while smothering the fire of truth," Eirik said, his pale green skin marked with ritual cuts of repentance. "Earth is not the threat. Earth is the mirror, and we cannot face what it reflects." He vanished after that speech. No one's seen him since. Rumor says he joined Reeves, and that's when the whispers started. Commandant Reeves. Until then, he'd been a ghost. His name had been on the original withdrawal order, but no one had seen his face. No interviews, no footage. Just rumors of a man who had once led Earth's black projects with precision cold enough to freeze a star. They said he disappeared after the Ardent Void campaign. Said he refused promotions. Said he chose silence instead of a seat at the Galactic table. We all thought he was dead. But then, one by one, Council black sites started falling. Not bombed, not raided, overwritten, entire AI cores fried from inside, biolocks cracked from unknown algorithms, drones reprogrammed in mid-air to turn on their handlers. These weren't attacks. They were surgical amputations. The Ghost Division, Reeves' division. He was back. And he wasn't leading an army. He was leading an idea. On the Vindicator, we monitored the collapse in real time. Dozens of council planets shut their borders. Others surrendered their fleets to local governors out of fear their own soldiers would mutiny. By the time the Tervana delegation, one of the most peaceful species in the council, issued a statement condemning the council's actions against Earth, we knew the galaxy was tilting toward something irreversible. I met with Captain Brandt in the briefing chamber. He stood in the dark, watching a projection of the galactic map. Dozens of red blips, council fleet positions, flickered with instability warnings. "They're eating themselves alive," I said. He didn't respond at first, just stared at the map like he was trying to see into its bones. "You ever wonder," he finally said, "if this was the plan all along?" "What? Earth breaking away?" "Number this," he said, motioning to the chaos. "The silence, the leaks, the surgical hits, the absence of Earth's voice, while the entire council implodes." I frowned. "You think Reeves planned the collapse?" "I think we never really knew what he was capable of." Brandt turned toward me. His eyes weren't afraid. They were calculating. "Find him." Tracking Reeves was like chasing a shadow through a hurricane. No ship logs, no confirmed sightings, only echoes, captains whispering about a Terran vessel operating in deep space, dropping weapons to resistance cells, and vanishing before sensors picked them up. Then we caught a break. An anonymous data packet landed in our communications net, buried in council encryption codes. Only one word in Terran standard at the top. Moradin. A rogue moon, orbiting a dead planet in uncharted space. No settlements, no trade, just silence. I assembled a team and left within the hour. We landed on Moradin in the dead of night cycle. The sky was pitch black, stars hidden behind a thick veil of ash and static. Our boots crunched on frost-laced stone as we approached the structure. A massive obsidian monolith that pulsed faintly with hidden energy. No guards, no defenses, just a single open door. And inside, silence. We followed a narrow corridor until it opened into a vast underground chamber, dimly lit by soft white lights that seemed to come from the walls themselves. And there he was. Reeves. Older than the pictures, face weathered, beard gray. But those eyes, dead cold. Still. Focused. He didn't greet us, didn't ask who we were. He just turned and said, "You came late." "Commandant, don't call me that," he snapped. "That rank died with the Council's trust. Just call me what I am." I hesitated. "And what's that?" He walked over to a console and activated a projection. Images of council colonies in flames, humans being dragged through dirt, black sites still operating despite council's denials. Then he looked me in the eye. I'm the reckoning. We spoke for 3 hours. Reeves had built something bigger than we imagined. Not a rebellion, not even a resistance, a reset. He wasn't trying to win a war. He was trying to end the system. The council had become a parasite, feeding off the obedience of those too afraid to challenge it. Earth wasn't the first to suffer, just the first to fight back loud enough to wake the rest. His Ghost Division had infiltrated nearly every council communication hub. They were the ones behind the leaks, the blackouts, the silent revolts, and Reeves was just getting started. There is no council, he said, only fear. And when that fear turns inward into doubt, they collapse. They always collapse. I couldn't deny it. I'd seen it firsthand, but I still had to ask. What's the endgame? He leaned forward. Let the galaxy burn the old gods, and then let the humans teach them how to live in the ashes. We returned to the Vindicator a day later with Reeves' data crystal, containing the command protocol for the next phase of Earth's plan. I gave it to Brant without a word. He stared at it for a long time. Then, without hesitation, he inserted it into our core console. The ship pulsed once, every system realigned, new coordinates, new fleet contacts, new orders. Earth had spoken, not with words, with action. The next week was fire. Terran sleeper cells activated across every known quadrant. Council banking systems imploded under cybernetic sabotage. Whole populations refused to pay planetary taxes. The Council high seat? Bombed by its own security droids. Blame it on Earth all they wanted, but no one believed them anymore. And Reeves, gone again. Like a ghost. But this time, he left something behind. A signal loop that played across every outlaw channel, every resistance net, every Terran-aligned system. Just 4 words. We are not done. No flag, no anthem, just a promise. The kind of promise only a human makes after the world has spat on him one time too many. The kind of promise you keep even if it means burning the stars. It started like all endings do. Slow, then all at once. The Council's collapse wasn't marked by any single battle. There was no grand final confrontation, no dramatic last stand. The end came with 1 million small cuts, bleeding an empire that no longer knew who served it and who simply smiled while sharpening knives behind their backs. Entire sectors went rogue. The Velsari trade bloc, once the Council's most loyal commercial engine, severed all contracts overnight and declared neutrality. The Dravathi Communications Array, responsible for 60% of intergalactic signal routing, mysteriously rerouted its satellites toward Terran-aligned systems. Supply lines vanished, fleets sat stranded in deep space, all because Earth chose to walk away. We didn't need to conquer the galaxy. We just needed to stop caring what it thought of us. And it broke them. Back on the Vindicator, everything changed after Reeves's data crystal went live. We received coordinates, dozens of them, for Terran sleeper cells, encrypted caches, and alliance contacts that had been dormant for decades. Reeves had spent years preparing for this moment, and now his plan was unfolding like a perfect storm. I stood on the command deck as the map updated. Red markers, Council enforcement units, were blinking out. Green markers, Earth-aligned cells, were rising in places I didn't even know humans had colonized. But it was the black markers that chilled me. Old Earth projects, Black Ops labs, banned technology. Some so classified even Brant didn't have clearance. One in particular stood out, Project Hollow Sun. Location, Sector 9-3 K Delta. Codename, The Wound. Brant didn't say a word when he saw it, just stared at it like a ghost from his past had just whispered his name. I pulled the file. Classified Terran military asset. Status: terminated. Command tag: active. Whatever it was, it had awoken. The journey to Sector 9-3 K Delta was like slipping through the ribcage of a dead god. Nothing but broken satellites, blackened hulls of lost ships, and radiation clouds that whispered death into our sensors. It was a no-fly zone, permanently sealed after Earth signed the Council's disarmament treaty nearly 50 years ago. Except now, that treaty was dead, and Earth had reopened the gates. We dropped out of warp 2 clicks from the coordinates. No stations, no fleets. Just a massive void structure, half buried in a cratered asteroid that pulsed with energy like a sleeping heart. It didn't appear on any scans. It didn't respond to hails. And yet, the moment we arrived, it opened. The front split in silence, like a jaw unhinging, revealing a hangar lit by dim crimson lights. I geared up with my strike team and went in. What we found wasn't a weapon. It was a reminder of what Earth once was, and what it had always been willing to become. Inside, Project Hollow Sun was alive. Not in the biological sense. Not AI either. It was something in between. The structure wasn't just a facility. It was a machine. A consciousness wired into the walls, designed not to think, but to remember. It remembered every Council betrayal, every Terran soldier executed for non-compliance, every peace treaty signed in blood and broken in silence. And it had one function. If Earth is ever silenced, awaken. If Earth is ever betrayed, retaliate. If Earth ever walks alone, burn everything else. I stood there as the walls lit up, one by one, revealing racks of prototype war drones, humanoid, silent, sleek, armed not with brute force but adaptive killware, tech that evolved mid-battle, hacking and rewriting enemy systems before they could respond. They'd never been used. Until now. Because now Earth had chosen war, not with fanfare, not with pride, but with purpose. And Hollow Sun was going to lead the charge. Back on the Vindicator, Captain Brandt authorized immediate activation. He didn't flinch when I showed him what we'd found. "Deploy 3 units," he said. "Shadow reconnaissance. Let the galaxy see what they buried." We dropped the first Hollow Sun drones on Council Base 472, a hidden surveillance outpost near the Gale 4 fringe, used for monitoring suspected Terran sympathizers. We never heard a single shot. Just static. The base went silent in under 7 minutes. No survivors. Only one message returned, burned into the base's central screen. Judgment acknowledged. Protocol continues. Word of Project Hollow Sun spread like wildfire. At first, Council media denied it. They called it propaganda, a false flag. But then a second base went dark, then a third. The kill signature was unmistakable. Code implants in every fallen soldier, hardwired with the same phrase, "You broke the pact. Now burn with the pieces." Council morale crumbled. Whole battalions refused to deploy against Earth systems. Young officers defected mid-mission. Some surrendered to human-aligned cells rather than face Hollow Sun in the field. Earth hadn't just withdrawn from diplomacy. It had built a future where diplomacy no longer mattered. A future designed for survival, not approval. And now the galaxy was begging for negotiations. But Earth? Still silent. I met with Brandt that night in his quarters. For the first time, I saw something in him I hadn't seen since the beginning. Weariness, not regret, not doubt. Just the exhaustion that comes when you've been right for too long, and no one listened until blood was already soaking the dirt. "How does it end?" I asked. Brandt didn't answer immediately. He walked to the viewport, watching the stars. "Depends on Reeves," he finally said. "He started this war without saying a word. If he speaks now, the galaxy will follow. And if he doesn't? Brant turned, eyes hard again. Then they'll follow the fire. 2 days later, Reeves spoke. Not a broadcast, not a press release, just a single message delivered to every system, every species, every leader, council or not. A direct feed, straight from the surface of old Earth. Reeves stood alone in the ruins of the old Terran War Tribunal, the place where Earth had once been forced to apologize for excessive violence during the Ardent Void campaign, where they'd called us monsters, even as our soldiers pulled bleeding civilians from burning wreckage. And he said, "We did not leave the council. You forced us out. You praised us when we bled for you, then shamed us when we bled too well. You called us volatile, savage, primitive. So we embraced what you feared, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to survive. We are no longer your weapon. We are the recoil. And now, you will feel it." And with that, Reeves stepped back. Behind him, the Hollow Sun legions rose from the ground, thousands of them, standing in perfect silence. No cheers, no anthem, just the sound of a galaxy remembering why Earth had once been called the last warborn. The council formally disbanded within 3 standard cycles. What was left of it scattered into regional coalitions, each scrambling to find meaning in a galaxy where Earth had rewritten the rules. Some begged Earth for re-entry, some offered treaties, some fled into deep space, hoping to start over. But Earth never answered. Because Earth didn't need them. We weren't building an empire. We were building memory, a legacy written not in peace treaties, but in the reminder that survival has a price. And Earth had paid it. Alone. Now, we were collecting the debt. The galaxy didn't celebrate the fall of the council. It mourned it. Not out of love or loyalty, but fear. Fear of what came next. The old order was gone, burned out from the inside, carved hollow by Earth's silence and the truth it forced into the light. There were no replacement parades, no new leaders taking thrones, only a vacuum. And the deeper the vacuum grew, the louder one truth echoed across the stars. Earth wasn't coming back to the table. Not as a guest, not as a servant, and definitely not as a subordinate. We weren't rebuilding what they had. We were rewriting everything they thought was permanent. In the weeks that followed the council's collapse, systems started to fracture. Territories torn apart by old rivalries. Debts that had been suppressed under council neutrality now bursting to the surface. It wasn't just politics. It was survival, unfiltered and ugly. On the Vindicator, we patrolled through the wreckage. We didn't enforce law. There was no law anymore. We enforced memory. That was Reeves's doctrine. Let every system remember why Earth stayed silent for so long, and what happened when it finally spoke. But this silence now, it was different. It wasn't tactical. It was heavy. The blood had been spilled, the lies exposed. The council's bones lay bare across the galaxy. And now we were staring at what remained. And I'll be honest, what remained scared the hell out of me. The first sign of pushback came from the Karnari Expanse, a cluster of outlaw systems that had once relied on council oversight to keep rival warbands in check. With the council gone, every one of them declared themselves sovereign, free, and untouchable by Terran interference. Then they started butchering Terran colonies. 8 stations lost in the first week. No survivors. They didn't even try to cover it. They posted the footage publicly, mocking Earth, daring us to retaliate. "Where is your Ghost Division now?" they jeered. "Where is your God of Silence?" We didn't respond with Reeves. We responded with something worse. The deployment of Hollow Sun Protocol 7 was never approved. Brant didn't ask anyone. He just read the report, watched the execution footage, then nodded once and gave the order. Protocol 7 wasn't like the other Hollow Sun units. These weren't adaptive drones built to disable. These were endgame tools, planet scorchers, system denial assets, designed to make sure that if humanity ever lost a war, it would leave behind nothing usable for its enemies. We launched 3, not at military targets, at infrastructure. Within 22 hours, every Karnari outpost, relay, and resource hub was turned to dust. Their core transport gate, vaporized in orbit, their deep storage archives, imploded under atmospheric compression fields, and as their warbands scrambled to regroup, we sent them only one signal. Not from Reeves, from me. You made us remember who we were. Now live with what we became. They never responded, because they never got the chance. By the 3rd day, the Karnari expanse was officially labeled lost space, uninhabitable, unrecoverable, unworthy of regret. Brant stood silent on the bridge as the final orbital footage played. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. I waited a full minute before speaking. You think we went too far? He looked at me. Not angry, just tired. They murdered families to prove a point, he said, so we proved ours louder. But at what cost? I asked. He didn't answer. Because he didn't have to. I already knew the answer. Everything. The cost was everything. Then came the Drenari Accords. A proposal, not peace, just terms. It came from a coalition of middle-tier species, ones who had stayed quiet during the collapse. Species who knew they weren't strong enough to defy Earth, but too proud to beg. They wanted new trade routes, a council, this time led by Terrans, a shared command structure, a future where the past was forgiven, and unity was the prize. They called it the Reformation. I brought the message to Brant personally. He read it twice, then handed it to me and said, "Your call." That shook me. Me? You've seen more than most, he said. You were there when Reeves vanished. You saw Hollow Sun wake up. You've been on the ground. Tell me, do we lead this galaxy, or do we let it choke on its independence? It took me a full day to answer, and when I did, I chose neither. We didn't join the Reformation. We didn't shut it down either. We gave them exactly what Earth gave the Council decades ago. Access to Terran technology, with limits, permission to trade, with strict enforcement, no seat at any table, no shared flag, and no illusions. Earth wasn't going to be their savior. We were going to be their reminder. You want peace? Maintain it yourselves. You want strength? Earn it. You want war? Try us. Just once. What followed was the rise of the Void Zone, a new neutral territory, unaffiliated, unregulated, unforgiven, a place for exiles, independents, Terran outcasts, and Council remnants trying to survive without loyalty. Some thought Earth would destroy it. But Reeves sent only one message. Let them build whatever they want. We'll still be here when it breaks. The Void Zone became a paradox, part black market, part cultural revolution, part Cold War chessboard. And it didn't take long before Terran agents started operating inside. Not to police, to watch. That was Earth's new strength. Presence. We didn't need empires anymore, just eyes. And the certainty that if anyone moved against us, they would never move again. The galaxy eventually stabilized, not through unity, through deterrence. Everyone had seen what Earth could do when it walked away. Now they were terrified to see what it might do if it ever walked back in. There were still sparks of rebellion. Old Council zealots who believed Earth had corrupted the galaxy. Rogue scientists who wanted to revive the Council's AI overlord programs. Fringe cults worshipping Hollow Sun like a god of wrath. We let them scream. We let them recruit. We let them dream. And then, when the time was right, we turned off their stars. Reeves was never seen again. Some say he died after his final speech, content to let Earth's silence speak for itself. Others say he still commands the Ghost Division from somewhere in the deep dark, where light can't reach and secrets sleep with their weapons. Me? I think he became the silence itself. Not a man. Not even a myth. Just the final answer to a question the galaxy never stopped asking. What is Earth willing to become when the rest of the stars turn their backs? And the answer? Everything they fear, and nothing they're ready for. They called us the Ash Generation, born after the Council fell, raised in the wake of Earth's silence, under the long shadow of Hollow Sun and Reeves' reckoning. We didn't grow up with stories of diplomacy or treaties. We grew up with warnings, with memorials to colonies wiped clean, with protocols etched into school systems like religious commandments. Don't trust promises that come with peace. Don't speak for Earth unless you're ready to kill for it. Silence is not retreat, it's restraint. And restraint ends when they forget what we've done. My name is Kale Wren, born in orbit over the Terran Bastion Station, trained in a world that never forgot war even when it stopped fighting one. I never saw the Council, never bowed to it, never spoke to a non-human without my hand near a sidearm. I wasn't proud of that, but I wasn't sorry either, because those who came before me had given us something rare. Not victory, deterrence. And deterrence, I learned young, is a prison made of fear, and someone has to guard the door from the inside. I was assigned to Terran Watch Post D7, a cold rock sitting at the far edge of the loom drift, a dead zone of static space where nothing moved, nothing grew, and no signals passed through cleanly. No one wanted this post. But that's exactly why I was sent there. Not as punishment, as a test. See, the Terran Defense Command doesn't promote based on years of service. It promotes based on how you handled the silence. And D7? D7 was made of nothing but silence. 3 towers buried into the moon's crust, 12 personnel, 4 drones, 1 orbital cannon that hadn't been fired in a decade. We weren't there to fight. We were there to watch. Because something had changed in the last few years. Systems weren't collapsing anymore. They were going dark, not politically, literally. Whole colonies, snuffed out. No wreckage, no radiation trails, no survivors, just void. As if they were unwritten. The Council would have blamed pirates. Reeves would have sent Hollow Sun. But Reeves was gone. And Hollow Sun had gone quiet. It started with a signal, barely detectable, buried beneath layers of distortion. I was pulling a late shift, reviewing long-range scan drift anomalies when it flickered across the lower spectrums. Too faint for audio, too irregular for code. But it wasn't random. That was the part that chilled me. It was shaped, intentionally broken. I isolated the pattern, ran it against every known encryption tree in the Earth archives. One match. An ancient distress code from pre-Council Terra, dated nearly 400 years before the Council even discovered Earth. Classified, forgotten. Until now. I reported it immediately to Central. They didn't respond. I waited. 3 hours? Then 6. Then all comms went dark. Not jammed. Cut. And then the stars started going out. At first we thought it was a power issue. Then we checked the backup optics. Then the hard light lenses, and still, no stars. The sky above us, once cluttered with systems, with ships, with trade lanes and satellite trails, was now empty. Like someone had peeled the galaxy off reality and left us staring at a painted void. 3 of my crew lost it. One tried to breach the oxygen lock just to breathe something real. We pulled him back, but the damage was done. Something was happening. Something no protocol had prepared us for. Something older than Earth's silence, and louder than its vengeance. We initiated fallback protocols and activated the deep core beacon, a last resort emergency ping hardwired into every Terran military facility across the stars. It would take 23 hours to reach the nearest relay point, but once it did, Central Command would know D7 had gone dark. That was our only play. And while we waited, I took the team down to the catacombs, ancient sublevels dug beneath D7 before I was born, No one ever used them. Too old. Too dangerous. But now, they were our best chance at surviving whatever was coming. Because something was coming. We could feel it in the metal, in the pressure shifts, in the sudden bone-deep understanding that we were not alone, not anymore. We found the old black archive chamber in sub-level 3, sealed since the collapse. Inside were files, locked behind retinal scans and DNA keys, old Terran protocols, legacy documents from the first contact wars, and one unmarked case, heavy, cold, buzzing with energy. I opened it. Inside was a sphere, black, polished like obsidian, with veins of red light pulsing across its surface. No instruction manual, no interface, but one word etched into its base. Nullborn. I didn't understand what it meant. But the moment I touched it, it pulsed, and everything in D7 shut down. Every screen, every light, every breath of artificial gravity. Gone. And then, the voice, not through speakers, not from outside, inside, my head, my blood. You have seen the edge, now choose the fall. I dropped the sphere, but the voice didn't stop. It spoke to all of us. Some screamed, some collapsed. One man put a gun to his head and whispered, "I see them. They remember me." Then pulled the trigger. He didn't die. He just vanished. Gone. No blood. No sound. Like he was never here. And that's when I understood. This wasn't a weapon. It was a key. And something had just used us to open the lock. The sky above D7 lit up, not with light, with absence. A ripple tore through the stars. Not as an explosion, but as a reversal. Like reality had been copied, edited, and pasted wrong. And in that rift, they came through. They didn't have names, didn't speak, they didn't fly, they simply replaced. 1 second, there was nothing. The next, there was them. Shapes that didn't cast shadows. Movement that didn't obey physics. Not aliens, not invaders, unmakers, and they weren't here for conquest. They were here for the lie. The one Earth told itself after the Council fell. That silence was enough. That vengeance could protect us. That hollow sun was the final sword. But this was older. This was what came before stars had names. The emergency beacon triggered 30 seconds before the final collapse. I stayed behind to send it, watched as the D7 station melted into unreality. I saw my own hands unravel. I screamed. But even that sound didn't make it out. And just before I lost everything, I saw one final message appear across the emergency console. Received. Response initiated. Code. Reeves 001 status. Awakening. The Unmakers weren't a species. They weren't a civilization, or a rogue empire, or an ancient AI lost in deep space. They were the correction. A purge. The thing that comes after memory fails, and the universe begins to forget itself. And we, humans, Terrans, warriors of vengeance and restraint, had only one thing left: Reeves. When D7's emergency beacon reached Earth, the world didn't respond with panic. It responded with protocol. On the far side of old Earth's scorched southern pole, long since uninhabited, long kept quiet beneath black vaults of sealed steel, Project Lazarus activated. No speeches, no red alerts, just 3 words on every Terran military net. Reeves is awake. He hadn't died. He hadn't disappeared. He had gone dormant, placed in cryosuspension in the event the stars ever went truly quiet. Not from betrayal, not from war, but from erasure. Now the erasure had come, and Reeves had risen. I woke up on a Terran med station in low orbit, my last memories of D7 like shards jammed into my skull. I should have died. We all should have. But somehow they pulled me out, what was left of me, anyway. 3% of the station remained in real space, the doctor told me. That's where we found you. Barely breathing. Hollow sun tech insulated your vitals. I didn't call for a rescue, I rasped. You didn't have to, he said. Reeves heard you. He came to see me personally. Reeves, the man, the myth, the cold engine that once broke a galaxy without firing a fleet. He didn't look older. He looked emptied, like someone who had seen the edge of all things and learned to walk along it. He stood over my bed without speaking for what felt like an hour. Then finally, "Did you see them?" I nodded. "They're not alive," I whispered. "There's something else." Reeves lowered his gaze. "They're what the Council woke when they started rewriting truth." I didn't understand. So he explained. Before the Council, before Earth, there were other civilizations, whole species who rose, thrived, then vanished. Without war, without plague, without warning, they left no ruins because they were erased by the unmakers, entities that don't invade. They remove realities, identities, history. They don't kill. They unwrite. The Council, in its hubris, found traces of them once. Dark data left behind by species that no longer exist. Instead of retreating, they prodded. They sent probes, signals, challenges. They lied to Earth about what they found. They lied to Reeves. But Earth was always watching. And Reeves? He was waiting. "We don't fight this with fleets," Reeves said. "Then how?" I asked. He looked at me like I should already know. "We fight with identity." That night, Reeves summoned the last surviving command corps of Hollow Sun. 12 members, all Terran-born, all hand-picked decades ago before the Council collapse. Each of them had been in hiding, sleeping inside Earth's last black site. Now they stood around a table, staring at a star map that was slowly blinking itself into oblivion. 77 systems lost to unmaker collapse. No wreckage, no distress calls, no memory. We didn't need weapons. We needed a reminder. That's what Reeves told us. "The only thing the unmakers can't erase is what we choose to remember," he said. "And humanity remembers everything." That's when he ordered it, Operation Final Echo. The plan was brutal. We would embed living memory transceivers inside Hollow Sun units and launch them into every system near unmaker activity. Each transceiver was a legacy core, data storage embedded with human memories, not files, experiences, soldiers dying with names on their lips, fathers holding their children before loading onto escape shuttles, the first kiss on Mars, the sound of Earth rain. Reeves believed if we could flood reality with memory, raw, unfiltered human memory, we could slow the collapse, give the galaxy a chance to remember itself, and maybe, just maybe, remind the unmakers that some stories fight not to be forgotten. I volunteered for the first launch. Not because I was brave, because I was done watching other people carry the silence. They implanted the transceiver core directly into my chest, synced to my neural spine, wired into my heartbeat. If I died, my memories would echo. If I lived, they'd multiply. Before launch, Reeves handed me a single object. A silver Terran coin, old as time, etched with the last phrase ever approved by Earth's united government. "We stand in silence, but we never disappear." The drop into unmaker space was like diving into static. Time fractured. I saw the past, the present, the screams of lost systems, the laughter of my dead crew, the sunrise over Earth through the cracked dome of Bastion Station. And then I saw them. Not bodies, not ships, just absence, shaped like consequence. They reached for me, and I opened my memories, my father teaching me how to fix a fusion coil, my first failed flight test, the smell of rust in a Terran hangar, my mother's voice humming a lullaby no alien would ever understand. And in that moment, the void hesitated, not because it feared me, but because it felt me. And feeling is the first enemy of forgetting. Other transceivers followed. Hundreds, thousands. Human memories launched like torches into a cave no star dared shine in, and slowly, the collapse slowed. Unmaker advance paused, not halted, but stalled, enough for species to remember Earth wasn't a monster. It was a mirror, of loss, of struggle, of survival. And in that mirror, they saw their own stories again. The last time I saw Reeves, he was preparing the final core. Not for war, for himself. A full archive of every operation, every sacrifice, every silence he'd ever endured. "Where are you going?" I asked. He looked toward the sky, now flickering with light again. "Where I belong," he said. "Into the places even ghosts fear." He placed the core inside his own chest, and then, without fanfare, without ceremony, he walked into the void, alone, unarmed, unapologetic, just a man carrying memory into extinction, daring it to blink first. We never heard from him again. But sometimes, in systems on the edge of forgetting, where stars dim and planets dream of vanishing, a signal plays, a voice, not a threat, a reminder. "You broke us. We survived. You silenced us. We remembered. You erased us. We are still here. We are Earth. We do not forget."